1978 Ford Mustang King Cobra. Today I took off the rear spoiler, stock factory rear spoiler. This is it upside down. This is the rear spoiler. So this is a 68 AMC Amex. My husband and I have cars that are 10 years apart. His favorite being the AMX. And my baby, of course, the little Mustang 2. So this car came with the rear spoiler, as most of the Cobra 2s and King Cobras did. This piece has brackets in the back that actually are bolted in. This piece is not bolted in. The brackets are broken. The spoiler itself has a nice big crack. There was cover-up paint trying to cover this crack up. I since have removed the cover-up paint because the cover-up paint was a different color. Cover-up paint was all over the bumper as well. And I since have removed all of 90% of the cover-up paint. So I don't know if you can see the color difference right here. I don't know if the sun's working with us or against us today. But anyway, so this piece here, instead of worrying about it too much, I went ahead and actually just glued it to the body. Tacked it in 2-3 different places with a little bit of super glue. And as soon as it, comes loose, it does have one bolt holding it in. So these pieces, though, you want to remove this back portion in your back. And the bolt is actually just in underneath this right here, right next to your rear tail lights. So for the rear spoiler, you have a handful of places where it bolts in. You have your anchor here. You have these 4 holes, 1, 2, 3, 4. These holes have a plastic grommet in them. You pull the outside of the tab and just pull down. Inside you will see a bolt. And then your last hole is here. Okay. And I will show you what those brackets look like. So my problem was that I had 2 brackets out of 6 brackets that were functioning, that were not broken. So there are 4 of these brackets here that have pre-existing bolts, nuts. These are made in the plastic. They're not meant to come out. You have your side brackets. So all 4 brackets look like this. 1, 2, 3. The broken one that I couldn't find. And then your outermost side brackets look like this. And there is a nut that you need to remove from both sides. A bolt from both sides. Now, when this bracket breaks, you can glue it back. The only problem is the threading on the inside of the plastic may or may not be similar. It's not as easy as if one of these break and you can glue it back. So what I did, how I'm doing this, and I'll let you know if it actually works. I went ahead and found the crack mark for these, put a little dab of super glue on it, put them in to hold them in place with where exactly they broke. I put masking tape around them to create 2 little dams on either side. And so this is what I found. The majority of them broke right here at this little wing and right beneath the bolt itself. So right at the end of the bolts, there was a crack and the wing was broken. I found these floating around in this bay area. So your spoiler's pretty tight. Even if you have just 2 bolts holding it on, it still sits pretty tight. And so if you can, and you notice that your spoiler is rocking around, make sure that you remove it as quick as possible so you can salvage these broken pieces. Glue them back on. So what I did was I created dams here with masking tape and then filled those dams with glue. I did it over here to this one as well. And what I'm hoping is that this will actually give them a little more stability rather than just having all of the weight rely on this thin little piece of plastic here. So on the far side, what did I do? So the far side, you actually have to screw into and have a bolt in plastic. And so this is the far side. I created an L-shaped dam with duct tape, and I filled it full of an industrial epoxy resin. And so, you know, even if I get a little too high, I can sand this down flush with where I need it to be. And when I take the tape off, I can make it look a little bit cleaner than what it is now and just do a box. And I filled it more than what I actually needed. So if you notice, the plastic over here is relatively thin all the way around where the bolt screws in. What I did over here was I found the edge of the bracket is right about here. The other edge of the bracket's here. So I went out about 2 millimeters from the edge of the bracket, which is on the inside here. You can't really see it. You can see the bump from the other end. And so I filled this with epoxy. And what I will do is find a decent sized wood bolt with a good amount of thread on it. I think that's the best way of doing this, is finding a very thready bolt, very thick, and the best thing I can think of is wood, deck screws, that kind of thing. I am going to drill a pilot hole through this first, through this epoxy, and then I will be drilling, mounting in the bolts, and I'm hoping with the addition of these other brackets it will hold the spoiler in place. I really would like to keep the original spoiler. The next thing on my list is to actually sand this trim down. All of the trim at one point was painted on this car. It came that way from the factory. However, what happened was, in the process of it aging over time and being owned, someone had sanded it down and then had painted over it with spray paint. And so what I got when I first started and gave it a bath, let's shut the trunk here for a minute, was I got this. So its first bath, it started chipping really badly. So instead of it looking, you know, poorly, I decided to go ahead and sand it all off. As you can see, I've got buffing compound on it in some places, and then it's actually pretty shiny in other places. But I personally like the brushed aluminum or polished aluminum look on cars rather than having it painted. I may go back to the original and have it painted. They always had it colored with the color scheme. So if it was a blue car, it was blue trim or darker blue trim. If it was a red car, it was red trim. And this was a yellow car with black trim, and I'm not too keen on that. So hopefully that looks okay. Let me know what your opinion is of the trim. I'll take a video of it when it's completely done. Today's kind of a fart around day with Mustang. I did my brake lines, put in new brake lines in the front when I put in the rotors. As I mentioned earlier, the brake lines were seized together. The rotors bleed valve was seized. I have bled the front brakes. I have not bled the rear brakes yet. So that is realistically the next thing on the list to do, is to bleed the rear brakes. Okay, that's it for today.